Hey everybody, welcome back. So we're trying something a little bit different this time, which is like that I did most of the braid analysis videos while also, let me turn this volume down, while also drinking, because partly like my thesis of doing the braid analysis videos, because there was basically no decent analysis of that game, was that I could probably, whilst drunk, do a better analysis of the game than anybody else had done. Um, I wouldn't recommend this, but at the same time, I think it will be interesting for the sake of this. Now, obviously, some of the puzzles that you're seeing here I did in other videos, but are not done here because I am using a save that's kind of at the start of the game. But in any case, for this video, we're going to go look at the shadow puzzles, or the forest, or the logging area, some people call it, because there's kind of two forests. You got the forest of the audio puzzles, and then you got the forest of the shadow puzzles. So we're going to go do those. But I just warned you at the start of this video that I have had several beers, so I may be a little bit slower than you might expect, but at the same time I might be more interesting, so who knows? Could be the perfect storm. So an interesting thing when you come over here, right, is that I guess unlike a lot of areas, certainly you come in and there's this kind of very attention-drawing tree sculpture, metal sculpture thing here, and there's like a puzzle in there, but you know, don't really know what to do with that. So you kind of come in a little bit of a weird way that's not like with most areas. There's no obvious beginning to the area. It's just kind of an area that you explore into. Even the first panel that you see here is like off, right? And then there's another panel down there, and it's also off. So obviously, you know, you can see a little bit of some specularity here and some shadows, but nothing but just a little bit of a hint. You know, you could even keep all the way going down this end of the path and just see nothing but panels that you can't interact with. So it's kind of interesting in that way, that it's not really like, I would say, any of the other areas, in the sense that it's not obvious where you begin. Ooh, so here's one of these windflowers. So some of you who may be deep into the Witness lore may know that there are, in fact, windflowers in every single area in the game, and sometimes they are indicative of something about the area. In this case, I would say I'm not sure what the thing is, other than there's very clearly a shadow of a stalk kind of going up to this flower. So that might be the way to tie it into the theme. Usually there's something about them that's tied into the theme of the area. So if you look at like the symmetry area, then next to the entrance to the symmetry area, on both the left side and the right side, there's one of these windflowers. I'll leave the rest up as an exercise to the viewer in order to go see what the different windflowers are in the different areas and the way that they might tie into the theme of those areas. So here you would have to explore a couple ways. So one possibility is that you go and we try this little door puzzle, which is nice because, oh, okay, shows us that that's the thing that opens the door, and then you might come down here and find this puzzle. Obviously you could go around the other way. I think it's kind of designed for you to find this door here first, because obviously it's a blue thing on orange, and it stands out, and, you know, going around this way, oh, well, okay. That answers that question. You actually can't do anything else. So it's a good way to start it, because you would know, okay, that's the thing that can open and close there. So it kind of plants that in your mind as you go in here later. So You know, here, of course, there's not much to say about the puzzle other than there's these shadows cast on it. So I think most players are going to figure this out pretty easily, that like, okay, maybe I just like use the shadows as a guide here and avoid the shadows, right? So it's not an exact science. There could be some player that just doesn't notice the shadows at all and therefore is like, I don't understand what this is. But the shadows as they are very abrupt and discreet on here. And that's even ignoring the fact that they're kind of pixely, which I think we're on the highest quality setting, actually, for this game. So, the Witness Anniversary Edition, Jonathan Blow. We have to upgrade these shadows. We have to add ray tracing. We have to add the ray tracing puzzles for the Anniversary Edition. Anyway, reflections. Anyway, so as we go on, then we get to this one, which is, again, kind of, it's a simple thing, but if we snap into the spot here, then the player here is in the way, right? So we have to kind of think, okay, well, I guess we disregard the player as far as the puzzle's concerned, and just imagine that they weren't there, and just think about the twigs that are casting a shadow on that, the branches. So here, you have kind of nothing to go on, but remember, we came into this area by opening up that door up there, so it's kind of already planted in our mind the idea that that could be opened up. Now, probably most players are not going to realize they could open it up from there, but it is planted into your mind the idea that, oh yeah, there's a door right over there that we opened up. You know. Okay, so now moving up here. So now we're starting to kind of move in a slight other concept, right? Which seems very fuzzy at first, and maybe will seem fuzzy to most players all the way to the end. But the basic concept here is that the shadow of anything except for like wood or branches or whatever doesn't matter. So here we've got shadows being cast by like the metal here, right? And then there's also shadows being cast by those branches right there. So we ignore the shadows of the metal bars and just focus on the shadows of the branches. And of course, somebody might not figure that out, as with anything in the game. You know, there's nothing to force you to have to do that. And then I think, kind of to enforce that idea, we have this puzzle where the shadow actually starts on the starting point, right? So you start in shadow. So it's kind of just enforcing that you know that that's what that means. And then once we get out here, now we're getting into, it's kind of like, it's an extension of that idea, right? In the sense of like, it becomes harder to figure out what is the metal and what is the branch, right? Now here it's fairly easy because we've got thin lines and then we've got thick lines, right? So the thin lines we know are the metal, and the thick lines we know are the branches. So it's pretty much something like this, right? Okay, so going up here, now I remember this being particularly a challenge to me, and it probably is to a lot of people. So I have to keep that in mind in thinking that it's very obvious to me now. But I think part of why this puzzle works, which this puzzle is a bit of a joke to anybody that really knows the puzzle, but part of why it works is because you expect there to be something tricky going on. And of course we do have something tricky going on, and there's all this like weird curvy shapes and all that. And so we kind of think, okay, well, like, what's the weird way around this? Maybe we go over here, right? It looks, you know, you see an obvious opening here around all this, but there's no obvious opening anywhere else. You know, of course, the answer is that we just cut through that little bit there, which is the bit that makes it kind of a joke, right? Is that there's this little bit there, but it's a surprisingly difficult puzzle to most people. And maybe it's exacerbated by that this is a little bit of a thick bit of bar there, but in any case, it all lines up, you know, it all makes sense. So in any case, that's an interesting puzzle for this area. I'm continuing to move on. So now we've got the bars are starting to be at an angle, so they're not really aligned, whereas here you could see they were kind of aligned. There you're aligned. One thing that's interesting about this area is the fact that it uses shadows, but of course the game has a shadow map system where you've got cascaded shadow maps, and so as we get further away, you can see that, you know, shadow becomes less detailed. I would say for the most part it's this, yeah, up until about here it's about the same detail, but you know, when you get really close, you get a decent amount of detail to it. And if you had less detail, it would be harder to do the puzzles, I suppose. So it's weird. Now, I'm not going through the full rigmarole, I guess, of testing that, because obviously I could change the quality settings for the game and see how the game deals with different levels of quality settings while also making these puzzles doable. But it is an interesting thing in general to think about with The Witness, that aspects that would normally be considered cosmetic with most games, such as the detail of the shadows, are pretty much integral to being able to do the puzzles in this game. Okay, so moving over here. So this is at kind of an angle, and then that makes it more difficult to pick out what are kind of the branches and what's the metal. So we kind of have to start thinking about that the metal is the regular bits, right? As in the grid here. So here's a bit with grid, and this might work. It's unclear, but well, it doesn't really look like it because it looks like that's irregular. So maybe we go, ooh, this is irregular too. So I'm gonna say here, because that looks like the only spot that I can see that I can't really point to it, but that there's not a spot, or there's only regular shapes, right? So we're going through all the spots, and there's only regular shapes over to here. So that's kind of cool, right? Because you would gravitate towards here maybe, but then you would see that and say, okay, well, that's not on the regular grid, and the regularity of that grid that's kind of been established through the course of, you know, this and this, and you know, they're not 100% regular, but the alignment of it being aligned is a thing that you take for granted until you get to the point where it's not. So you have to kind of see it as like, okay, well, there's this regularity to this thing and not to the other thing. Okay. So now we're going out, and the wire, of course, splits off. Is that shadow of the wire, even though the wire's under the ground? I think it is. So that goes off there and there. So we're at the point in this area where we can kind of go either way that we want to go. I'm just going to go based on the way that I went the first time I played it, which is to go this way. There's no real particularity about which way you might want to go. So this area kind of does a couple different things. So one, we're kind of doing something that's a little bit more explicit of a shape here. So it's a little bit less of sticks and then a grid or something like that. It's like, but we're still talking about negative space. But now we've got this thing in the way, right? And well, it's like, okay, what do we think about the thing in the way? Well, we can't like not do that. We can't be like, okay, well, this thing's in the way, so ignore it, because then we wouldn't get to an end. So we have to kind of be like, well, maybe we're outlining a shape and we just kind of have to project it onto the panel. But this thing's in the way, right? So it's a very basic way of doing that. I'm always amazed and impressed by the way in which these things are actually based on something. And I'm sure they are. Here I can't quite see it, but I'm actually quite sure they are, because generally speaking they are. Some of them I can definitely get in the exact spot and see them, but here I would say I'm a little bit low of where I would see them. Now it almost feels like we're in the shadow of what should be that tower, but I guess the tower's right there. So we're a little bit off from the tower. But as far as the actual shape in the branches there producing something on the panel, it's not super obvious here, but there are some spots. I'll continue to look at it, but I do remember at least being able to see one of them or two of them. But again, Witness Anniversary Edition, we have to be able to see these things. It has to be clear. Anyway, so we've got shadows here, and so here we've got a little bit, you know, kind of progressing along that of the distortion. We know that we've got something going here, and then we see something up, so it probably goes up here and then over, and we see down, over, and of course that should be fairly easy to do. We just go like this, right? So we're kind of progressing along that same idea. Then we get to this next one. Of course, again, I want you to notice as we walk over there, it's very blurry with the this shadow cascade until I get very close. Up until I get about this close, it's very blurry. So now we've got this thing stretched out, right? So now we're starting to play around with, oh, okay, well, this thing's going to get distorted by the nature of the way in which shadows cast, right? And so we know that goes over there, right? And of course, this might be tricky because, you know, the average person might think, okay, well, this goes over and down and over. Of course, we see a over and down and over, so maybe you think that's, excuse me, maybe you think that's what we're looking at here. But of course, right, this is where the edge of that pillar is in terms of the shadow, so it actually goes down and over and down like that, right? And then up and over and up and over and, well, presumably up, right? Because the exit's right there. So it's kind of cool because you have that repetition of that pattern right here of down, over, down, over, down, over. But because we see that here and here, a lot of players might not necessarily think how to map that onto this initially. They might think, well, okay, I just went down and over, so is that already this down and over, or what? And so you could easily do, you know, could easily find yourself going, okay, down, over, down, and then going over like this maybe, or like this, because obviously that looks stretched out, so maybe it's like that, and then over, and well, that doesn't make sense, right? In any case, it could be a real challenge considering that. Now, of course, there is this kind of fun aspect of how this area connects into the back of the keep area. But, of course, you don't have access to that at this point. It's just kind of a little bit of a teaser. But it's fun. It's kind of fun to notice that, I think. So, continuing on. So, now we start messing around kind of on a different axis, I guess, because you might think, okay, well, we've got this, and that goes over here. But now, like, we've actually got two starting points there, so that's kind of the thing to notice here, is that there's two starting points, because initially you'd be like, okay, well, that goes down and over, but how does this work? Maybe I go up here and through here. Well, that doesn't work. So you have to notice that, like, it's offset from the starting point completely. So we go over and over. Of course, we have a little bit of a gap there between the shadow on the panel and the shadow on that piece of metal over there. So we have to kind of think about that maybe there was like a one square gap there. And then we go over and up and over and over. Oh, I was wrong. I was wrong. I'm gonna guess that I was off by 1. Okay. So yeah, you just kind of have to start thinking about, oh, okay, well, it's projected off of where it is, but it's projected off in just such a way that it ends up over here on the other one, lined up, and that's just real cute, and I kind of like that type of thing about the game. So then we come down here. It's like, well, okay, we see this, but that's it, right? And now we've got this thing in the way. But it's way up here, and it's kind of, you know, this is one of those, like, things in the witness that starts to be about a real thing, right? Which is the, like, if this pillar was not here, that would line up perfectly, right? But because this pillar's here, it's up here, right? And so it's kind of a funny thing that if I think about, like, my own game, Taiji, that it takes a lot of inspiration from this game. I don't get this kind of thing for free the same way this game does. Not that this is totally free, like, it's not, it requires some design thought, but at the same time, it is for free in the sense that if you have a system that casts shadows in your game or whatever, all you have to do is set something up in such a way that it casts shadows and put a thing there in the way, and it's going to automatically be in the way. Now, I still always wonder, because they're so aggressively the shape of the puzzle, right? I always wonder whether there's some fuckery happening with that, but in any case, I think that's pretty much it for this, right? Is that we have that and this down here. Now, of course, as a master player, I know that I can draw while also seeing this. So I'm going to assume that it's something like this, and then something like that. Am I wrong? What? What? Oh, maybe we go over more. That would make sense. Wait. Over, and then up. Yeah, okay. Again, it ends up just kind of being a process of elimination, but the important part is noticing that this is projected up here, right? And then it's just kind of like figuring out where that aligns exactly, and how much distortion there is on the shapes. So this one's fun because I actually really like this one. This is one of my favorite ones in this area, because the fun thing that you might not notice about this is that the support for it is knocked over to the right, right? And so that's partly why we end up with this down here, right? Now, it wouldn't be quite right, from what I remember. Oh, no, okay, maybe it would be right. Oh, this one's the one that it would be right. Okay, so this one's maybe a little bit weird. Because it's knocked over. But in any case, it's still knocked over. I think I was confusing this a little bit with the one from... Oh, dear. Okay, so this one I definitely have to remember the way it casts around this. Okay. So we go over, and then over and up in a zigzaggy pattern. There's one over at the symmetry area, I think. It's supposed to line up perfectly, but the support is twisted in a way. In any case, that's okay. But with up here further, like this one makes more sense, right? Because then we've got this, but if this was not like that, you could sort of imagine that it would go straight up, right? right here and would line up. Maybe not, but those are details I might have in a perfect world, if I were designing this game, might have focused on amplifying. But you know, nothing can be perfect. Okay, so that goes down here and here. Nope. Nope. I messed up. Maybe it goes like this. Excuse me. There we go. Yeah, so it's tricky, and of course you can't really quite tell just on the tree, right? Down there. It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, it's there, but it's kind of hard to tell. Still wondering. I'm still wondering how much of this is real versus faked, you know? Because it would be very easy to fake it. And I do wonder, every time I play through this area, how real is it? How real is it? Because I should be seeing at least something resembling that, but instead I'm just seeing a dappled leaf pattern here. So maybe it's fake. That would make me disappointed. That would make me disappointed, Jonathan Blow, that you would fake that. I know you didn't design these puzzles, but in any case, so this one's like just totally way off and all the way over here, right? Which is weird because I feel like it shouldn't be that hard. Oh yeah, so the fun thing here is that from where you're standing, right? Say you're standing, if you're standing here, you can't see it, but let's say we go over here and do it from here. You know, you might think, oh, this lines up right here, but it actually doesn't, right? It lines up right here. So it's actually this line at the bottom here that lines up with that. So we have to go off by one with that, where it goes over, and then over, and then up, and then over, and then over again, and then down and up. Nope, I messed up. Okay, let's look at it. It's like this, right? Up and over and down and over and up and over and over and up and over. That looks right, though. Up and over and down and up and over and up and over. Oops. It's cut off that screen. Okay. Oops. Over and up and down, and then there's a down. What am I doing wrong, kids? Tell me what I'm doing wrong. I'm doing something totally wrong. Maybe we gotta do like this. Maybe it doesn't go over as much as I'm thinking it goes over. No, it doesn't work. Well, I'm struggling on the recording, kids, because it shouldn't be as hard as that. But yeah, the fact that I don't see anything makes me wonder whether it's faked. Now, I'm sure I'm gonna hear in the comments from somebody that worked on The Witness that, no, it's not faked at all, you just don't understand. But it looks kind of faked to me, kids. I don't know if it is, but it looks kind of faked. Okay. Now that goes like that, right? Am I wrong? I don't think so. I think it's like up, over, over, up. Okay, it doesn't go all the way back, so it goes up, over, over, up. It doesn't go all the way back, and then it goes like this. There we go. Okay, it was overly complicated, but I do wonder whether it's faked. Okay, so that goes into the dirt here. We can kind of follow it over here a little bit, through the woods. And if we keep following it through everything, whoops, and eventually we find that it's went all the way over here and opened up part of this gate, which, okay, that's cool, but what do we do here? Okay, there's a bit here that's clearly unobscured, but I don't really know what to do over here, and there's some stuff here. Seems like it matters, and I don't know, man. So even if you had figured that out, then you would have to go over here and notice that that had split off, which of course we pointed out earlier when we were talking about that split off, that it goes over here. And so, relatively speaking, this stuff is pretty easy. But, you know, we start out in the shadow here, which is pretty good to imply that, okay, so we're not talking about avoiding shadows anymore. And the fact that the shadow looks not 100%, but pretty strongly like it follows the grid, makes us just think, okay, maybe we follow the shadow as though it was the line. And that gets, you know, reinforced there by that being right. And so then it's like, okay, so now we've got something that's a little bit goofier, right? You wouldn't want to start with this as far as following the line, because it's just a little bit goofier, you know. There's basically almost no point except here and here where that line actually intersects with the grid, right? But, you know, we're kind of extracting that out. And this is kind of, you know, I don't think I ever talked about this exactly because it was going to be in my overall witness analysis essay, but there's generally 3 types of areas in the game. You've got areas that are about abstraction. You've got areas that are about kind of just solving symbol puzzles where you're just kind of doing, like, this is like the last video where we're talking about the treetops, where you've got the little stars there that just mean things on the grid of the puzzle. Or you've got the swamp puzzles where you've got stuff there, or you've got the white and black dots or the colored dots or whatever. Just stuff in the panel that means something. And then you've got, like I said, you've got abstraction here. This is one type of abstraction, although it's a little bit of a mix of abstraction. And then the third category, which is like direct observation, which is where you just see a thing that tells you what line to draw, right? So, you know, this gets pretty close here to direct observation in that you've got a shadow that tells you the line to draw, right? Because it's basically a thing that's the line, right? But as we go through this area, it kind of meshes in with the other concept, which is the concept of abstraction. Now, there's some obvious areas of abstraction, such as the audio area, the sound puzzles, because there's no, you know, there's no 100% way to represent a line to a sound. It's got to be an abstraction of some kind. But here we're kind of playing in the lines there, so we can see, like, now we're talking about, well, where's the closest bit to put that line, right? And we can see, well, it's that, right? But is that the line, right? Is that the line? No, it's based on our abstraction of what if we snap it to the grid points, right? But even here, it's like, this is actually closer to that grid point. But because of the way we draw the line, that we have to draw here and we have to stay here, that's the closest approximation we can give it. So we're starting to kind of play with that idea of abstraction of the concept of the shadow. So here we've got another way of playing with that concept of abstraction, right? Which is that the shadow has branches, so we don't go that way, we don't go that way. So we all have to follow the branches that make the most sense, right? So our exit is up here, right? So what does that mean? And of course, it's like well, we can't go that way without like going around this way, and I guess that's actually a different branch, but do we go this way or that way? This way seems better, maybe. And this seems kind of close, and maybe we go this way. So, we're starting to play with that idea of how do we abstract that, right? And the abstraction is like here purely based on like, well, most of the stuff is in that corner, right? And most of the stuff is in this corner. And that wouldn't make sense because we touched this other bit that's really far away. So we're starting to play with the idea of like, how do you abstract things, right? Now this one is like actually interesting because we can maybe even see it better from really far away than when we get up close. But okay, so this one actually, never mind. This is kind of cute, right? Because I remember this one, right? Because you would think, okay, we go this way and this way and this way, and then go down, right? But this is again playing with like, again, how do you abstract things and how you think about things, in the sense that like, if you think about this as a separate piece from this point at the end of this piece is actually much further away from the rest of the line in terms of connection versus this point. So you end up doing this, right? So it's kind of weird and goofy, but we start playing around with that, right? It's like playing around with the fuzziness of how you might think about something. And, that's down to individual preference for a player, whether they like it or whether they don't like it. Well, this is going to be a short video. I just realized that because we're only like 36 minutes in. But it is kind of a simple area. But with that said, it's interesting, and I really like the way that it plays with its different abstractions. And of course, we've had the gate open up. We got two sides of the gate, and then of course we have this panel here that we don't really want to overlap. But this panel kind of joins the main two ideas of the area, which is like we either follow the shadow or we avoid the shadow. So and that's based on the different sides of that grate where it was shadowing. On one side, where the gate was shadowing on the right side, we get, because it unlocks fairly early actually, I think. Well, I guess not necessarily. But one side of the way in which the area splits up in terms of the puzzles, right? It splits up into puzzles where we're still avoiding shadows. And the other side splits up where we are following shadows, which is just what we were doing a second ago. So both of those two halves of the area end up funneling into opening up this gate, and they open up one side and the other side of the gate. And each side of the gate that's opened up by each of those types of puzzles reveals a half of this puzzle that represents that type of mechanic. Anyway, so that's that area. If we look at the detail on this laser box, you can kind of see that there's some tree branches in there. And, well, we got our laser for that area. So, anyway, thanks everybody for joining me. This is what you all voted on for this discussion. There's a nice little hidden secret here of this woman lounging here. So this one definitely is real. You can see the different components of that. But the other stuff, I don't know. Is it real? Tell me, Jonathan Blow. If you like this video, tell me whether or not the shadows are real or whether you lied to me. In any case, if you like this video, subscribe to this channel. That way you can keep up with the next parts. We've got, I think, at least 2 or 3 more parts that we've already figured out exactly what we're doing next. I'm not sure what the next one is. As you all may or may not know, someone blew up the AT&T cellular hub or something in Nashville, in my state, so Tennessee. So I don't have internet right now, so I can't actually check to see what the next thing is on the list. places to do, but the actual places that we have to do next are the quarry, the town. Now the town's going to go last because that has to go after everything else, because it's the most meta of all areas. And I actually even go after the mountain. I think I'll leave that up to a future poll to decide that. But we've got the keep here. I think the keep might be the next one after this, as far as what we've already specified, and of course the desert. So I think it's desert, it's keep, or it's quarry. I want to do quarry before I do town, because of course there's stuff in the town that utilizes the mechanics from the quarry. So next video is either going to be the keep or it's going to be the desert. So keep that in mind, and obviously if you'd like to suggest anything for me to focus on for these videos, other than just the area has already pretty much been decided, then you can contact me on Twitter at mvandevender. I'm not going to put a little thing on the screen here, so it's at mvandevender, and that should be good enough for you. In any case, thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed our little look at the shadow puzzles in the forest area. It's one of the areas in the game that I like a lot. I do also like the desert here quite a bit. I feel like the desert's going to be a real challenge to cover in a way that is satisfactory to some people, because it's very technical in the way it's executed, even more than the forest. And I don't understand it super deeply, so you're going to get what you're going to get as far as having me cover it. But in any case, it is a cool area in the game, and I hope to see you all around in the next video. Till then, have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.